Morning from Oaxaca. Hi, good morning. Amy. Yeah, so we wanted to talk a bit about suicide. I was trying to connect with my earliest recollections of suicide, and I don't know, I can't remember a time when I wasn't suicidal as a child, and how creative my attempts of suicide were, and how impulsive. It was kind of like a background, always there feeling that leaving the planet was, an option, not just an option, but a real pull. And I think it started with trying not to breathe, trying to kill myself by stopping my breath, and then pulling my clothes off, trying to catch pneumonia running through the frozen winter of Manitoba, and also never knowing when it was going to happen, if I was going to jump in front of a car. It was so impulsive. It was just like a pull that I had very little control over. It was just a constant attempting, right? And I could relate, now I can relate back into the body about, the drive to leave was so powerful, it was so huge, and it definitely was trauma related. Some of it came out of a deep despair. I would call it a dark, pulling despair. And then when I feel that dark pulling despair, and when I remember the felt sense of that, I also, felt my body pull down into the ground, like into almost like a grave. And from a colonized perspective, it would be grave, but from a decolonized lens, it was more like not a grave so much as being tangled in the roots of a tree in the mud. Like my body would be pulled in there, and so it was more, I think, more like the trees were holding me to the earth rather than a grave to die into. So It was very different than the colonized version of being held underground. Right. It was more like the ground was, the trees were saying, the roots were saying, you're not going, the despair would be this big, this giant, and then the tree trunk into the mud would be more like holding me rather than it being
like company or something.
Yeah, almost like a tree parenting, that there weren't adults there there was just so much trauma all around all the time, and the trauma, I think it was like to escape the trauma, the constant drive. I'm actually surprised I'm alive.
Yeah.
Given all the suicide attempts. And so I guess,
can I ask you?
Ask a question.
I was just curious when you said that about the despair and how big it was.
Yeah.
That made me curious about.
So you want me to find it and track it? Okay, let's see if I can remember it. It's
I'm curious.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
It's so unbearable. It's hugely unbearable. And it seems like it's like I'm witnessing more than I can bear.
Right.
It's not even so much that what's happening to my own body, but what I'm seeing around me.
Yeah. There's almost a turning away or
the body turning away is from the sexual, from the penis, like from the sexual abuse, the body turning away there. Yeah. But then that big despair here, it's so collective. It's so, that feels very my mother's line of, unbearableness.
That Russian.
It doesn't go that far.
No.
It doesn't feel like it goes beyond Canada.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't seem to go back to Russia. It seems to be it feels like it's her life and her life in the Indigenous world. Interesting. It doesn't feel like it's her life in the Mennonite world. I'm sure that goes back further. It feels very very Indigenous. It feels like her life in the Indigenous, as a Mennonite woman in the Indigenous world.
Mm.
I don't know how to explain that, but
Wow.
yeah.
So there's something about her experience.
And I can't even look. See, I feel like
Yeah.
I'm my mother now. She cannot look at what's happening
Right.
to her kids,
Mhm.
what's happening in the Indigenous world, right?
Right.
On my father's side, and
There's,
the line of horror,
So
the line of genocide.
Mhm.
It's that's the line of genocide over there.
and she can't look at it.
She can't look at it,
Yeah.
and I'm her somehow.
Mhm.
That's interesting. So this root of suicide, it's so shocking, but it almost feels like this root of suicide is my mother's. A great deal of it is my mother's. I can't even look. Okay,
Wow.
I still can't look.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not allowed. I don't want to see. I don't want to see. And of course, then when I think about my own life, it's been, 65 years of witnessing and seeing it all.
Mhm.
And here I am, my mother who can't see.
Can't look
I'm
at
really
it,
stuck
yes.
now.
Yeah.
And this is.
Yeah. It's like
I cannot open my eyes.
okay. Okay.
But I'm not suffering now.
Okay.
But I can't see.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's a lot of sexual abuse,
Mhm.
violence, and I can't look at the
Can't-
trauma.
can't
So it's like a big bottle of
Yeah.
So I still can't find me. It's all her.
Mhm. So you got the her of the can't look at all that trauma. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you kind of just
It's stuck. It
notice,
feels stuck.
and it's stuck, and that's what she that was
She
happening
never did
for her.
see, and she never. We always helped her not to as well.
Oh.
And she's passed. My
Yeah.
mother passed this year. She died, and she's in pretty good shape on the other side there.
Wow.
But this was her life
Mhm.
here, and it
Mhm.
looks like
It's like you carried
I hold
it.
her life.
Yeah.
I hold her life. I hold my mother's life.
Wow.
And I hold my father's life, because he's here too. I hold their
Mhm.
lives.
Mhm.
And that seems to be at the root of the suicide, because this is all coming out of suicidal feelings, right?
Yeah.
So their lives are at the root of my suicide, which is so interesting, my
Yeah.
suicidation. So I wonder about children and youth, and how much of their suicide is the history of their peoples.
Right. The history
And
and
there's
the,
it's just
there's something very
tender there.
tender.
Because
precious.
it feels so, it feels like colonization has, okay, let me get that word out of the way. It feels like the trauma of genocide. And if I can't find that tree, if I can't find the tree or the culture or the thing that can hold me to the earth, I can't deal with that dysthymic and the constant urge to want to fly off the planet, because there's some beauty in that. There's some beauty in beauty in leaving.
In finding a way out.
Yeah. It's not even a way out from here in my body. It feels less like a way out and more like another option. It doesn't feel like an escaping so much as that's
Another,
a perfectly legitimate right to do that.
Yeah.
Which is another weird thing to be coming up. It's a different, if you can't find your tree, if you can't find that mud and that root,
To hold you there.
the connection to the land. It's if you can't find your connection to the land, this is so powerful. If I don't have my connection to the land, I guess I was expecting, I don't know, expecting creator or something, but it's not what it is.
That's
connection
not what's
to land for
it's
me.
the land.
It's the
It's
land
the
and
tree, the mud.
the tree, the mud. So there is water there too, in the sense the mud. It's in the loam and the I don't know. I feel like that is also a parent of mine, and so Yeah, so there were these other parents
Uh-huh.
that come with a lot of trouble and a lot of pain. But when I'm buried underground with the tree, it's a beautiful place.
Wow.
It's not painful. There's something really not painful in this grave that's connected to land. I don't like the word grave, but
it holds you.
it holds me. Yeah. And going feels okay too. I have to say that. It doesn't feel, So,
So there's this holding of
I can open my eyes now.
Oh,
That's
you can.
interesting.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so that the
holding-
closing eyes, that seems to be my mother's line. The sexual abuse, the violence seems to be, that's directly the genocide through my father's line. That's the colonized, brutality, genocide. These are the things that make it hard to stay on the earth. Very difficult.
And children will, and youth will feel, they were holding those pieces.
Well, I think the thing that happens when we're working with clustered suicide and children I don't think we understand fully the depth of what's going on for them. Like the sense that it is like it's so automatic. It's so, the impulsiveness of wanting to jump off the planet is so unexpected, shows up anywhere, it can happen any time, right? That impulsivity of it. And then also the vicariousness of whatever the parents, what's going on in their parental role. Like they're holding the trauma of their parents. And sometimes intergenerationally, the intergenerational trauma. At least I was on my father's line, not so much on my mother's line, not sure why, or it might show up another time. But the other thing I think that I always thought, and didn't have that experience today, was my connection with my siblings. Like the sense that, and it is there, it's like it's so speechless. The sibling thing is so speechless and so frozen. The tearing apart of families, or where you lose your kids, where you can't find your brothers and your sisters, and you can't find your nieces and your nephews and your cousins, or you can't find your family. The disconnection, caused by the 60 scoop Indian residential schools. In the case of my own mother, Mennonite families aren't allowed to marry Indian families, right? Like the break and the ripping and the tearing.
It's like a tearing.
It's a fabric. Yeah, it's like taking this beautiful tapestry and like pulling a piece of, a piece of woven beauty and just kind of unraveling it, and
it's intolerable.
Yeah, intolerable. Yeah. And those are deaths that just seem to, really, the death of family seems to really fuel the suicidation as well. Even like in the 60s, even can't, and it's so painful. I know I can't even go look to see in the 60s, from the 60s scoop, if one of our kids, I can't go look at the death records because I can't. My body can't go there. It's too painful.
Can I ask you one quick thing here? Because there's your family history, and then there's this sense of as you're talking, there's a sense of on and on and on of that ripping apart.
The fabric ripping apart.
Is that is that the community? Is that the?
That part I can see back from Russia.
Oh, okay.
And I can see back on my dad's side, from Turtle Mountain to, or right from my great-great-grandmother was probably one of the Indians that had to marry, this foreigner,
right,
so that he could survive a winter. Great-great-grandmother, but like she was stolen, probably a stolen woman, right? Yeah. Stolen from her family. I think that's when I think of a weaving, weaving goes back centuries.
Yeah.
there's definitely this intergenerational ripping apart
Yeah.
of families.
And I'm curious about the suicides and the clusters.
Clustered suicides.
There's something. It almost feels right now like
Well,
they're.
it's it's sort of like a clustered death. Like when the kids when the siblings are ripped apart, like when our kids went to different foster homes, or where I couldn't see, I don't know if he's alive or dead, or or these kids.
It's like that alive or dead is coming out like through the body or something.
Yeah, and it's a death and a suicide and a murder, and it's kind of all of that jumbling, murdered, suicide, death,
and that's the history.
And the beauty of it coming together, like when you do find the missing kids. Oh, there's the sadness there too, because your lives have been so different. You've grown so differently. So yes, you know each other in a deep, profound way, but you don't know each other at all because your lives were so incredibly different. So vastly different. Like one of the kids grew up in a very wealthy Jewish family, and others not, right? Others, even our languages were different. So it's as you know, we're even bringing one of our Mexican kids up.
Right.
That my brother's daughter. She doesn't speak English, so it's just it's woven apart. When it comes back together, it's a complete. It becomes almost like a piece of modern art. Fractured pieces of modern art put together. No longer is it a woven tapestry. It's a piece of really freaky modern art. I wish it was a Pollock, but it's not.
Jumbled.
It's a geometric,
beautiful, painful, blah.
Wow, what is this modern piece of art, right? Of what the family is, right? So I just think what comes out of what we've talked about, what are the good points in terms of helping children and youth, or people understand suicide and what happens for youth and kids. What have we pulled out of here that's really going to help in the AFOT piece?
One piece, I think there's many. One piece that seems important is the body acting or showing that line of death and stolen and ripped apart, and that ongoing on.
Yeah, that there's a vicarious intergenerational piece that's involved with what's going on in the bodies of people who want to die.
And it's showing what's happened and what's continuing to happen. It's showing that ripping apart, that theft, the death, the murder.
And I guess the other piece I think it's important is the connection to land, right? Like you can't deal with suicide, I don't think, without... I don't think you can keep kids on the planet that want to die if they don't have the roots of the tree, or if they don't have some culture or land-based, something more powerful than the trauma.
Right.
It's got to be something bigger than the trauma that occurred. And the connection to ancestors. I'm trying to...
And not assuming, also us as clinicians, not assuming that a child talking about being down in the ground is a negative thing.
Don't think of it as a grave. I've learned that with people where they said they're terrified. Oh my God, I'm in a grave. And then I go, well, what's it like there in that grave? Like, what are you smelling? What are you tasting? What does it feel like? Getting past the colonized lens of it all, because you're actually in the earth.
And then getting past the reaction, the being so scared of it that you can't look at it.
Yeah, and it's so... From even what I've done this morning here, shared with you, to me the tree is the everything for me in this little discussion. That really keeps me here. Land is what keeps me here, the land. And I love family, but family's going to go too, and I'll be there with them. And the thing that isn't going to come with me is land, and to remove my opportunity to be immersed in it,
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge loss. That's something that will keep me here.
Right.
Is I love this land.
Right.
And I think children do too.
Yeah.
Youth love land. And the idea that they could, that you know, they'll keep their other connections, their spiritual connections, but to lose out on the roots of the trees, the water, the smells, the animals,
Mm-hmm.
the life that's here. I think it's really important to attach kids to the life that's here. It's really critical. And I think we do not a bad job of connecting them with, you know, the spirit of people that have died, the angels, or whatever you want to call all that. But do we do enough to connect them to the land?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree.
We romanticize that,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't fundamentally get their feet
Get them
into the
attached.
attached
Mm-hmm.
to Mother Earth
Mm-hmm.
and water, and I think sometimes, and for kids to know that the unbearableness in their bodies, the unbearable felt senses in their bodies, you know, are collective and not all theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, like now, I like kids to know, kids and youth to know that life gets so much sweeter and better because, you know, when you have control over your life,
Mm-hmm.
and that takes aging.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I think poverty terrifies kids. Like I remember being homeless and not wanting to live because I don't know where I'm going to sleep or how I'm going to get my food, or, you know, it's so challenging to be a homeless child, and to try to, it almost feels like not staying alive is easier than to be alive and trying to find housing, food, water, job, you know, agency.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think we have to do a way better job on agency for children,
Mm-hmm.
so that, you know, we lose a lot of kids in care. They age out and they die
Yeah.
because it's too fucking terrifying, excuse my language, but it's terrifying to face the world without the tools
And
and
it's
the skills.
exhausting.
Exhausting, yeah. But
You've talked about that before.
yeah, the exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the other thing about exhaustion that is interesting, because there's two sides to exhaustion. You know, one is like I might as well just die, but the other exhaustion is this: it does take you off your feet and onto the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It does make you. It does take you right to the earth.
Right.
You know, and
Yeah.
how much, you know. Yeah. So.
There's a sweetness.
There's a sweetness in the exhaustion,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the horror too.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to tell kids that they will find agency over time as they keep
Mm-hmm.
educating and moving and getting jobs, and that gets easier and easier to live.
Yeah.
It gets a lot easier to live. It's just hard to live through childhood, through trauma. And you get a handle on your trauma over time.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else you want to say? We have to fold this up because we don't want to bore you guys too long with our talk. But are we missing anything? Or I'm sure we're missing tons. But
How about for the piece that you tracked? Is there anything left?
no, I feel like it's, you know, good. I'm good. I'm actually feeling pretty good. And it was good to actually visit those places again. Mainly because I care so much that so many children are dying in this country.
Yeah.
And I have to say, one thing about all of that, the wanting to die, the suiciding, the feelings, you know, all of that, it raises a compassion and a love in you that makes you really dedicate your life to children.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that I see that in you, and I see that in so many survivors, those that have managed to escape suicide, because it was such a good friend during traumatic years. You know, it does make you care so deeply.
Yeah.
And it does definitely focus your life. It's definitely, I've had an amazingly beautiful life. and a lot of it comes out of, you know, dedicating your life to these children that make it through the cracks, or help them pull them through the cracks of trauma and colonization, and, you know, the fallout of genocide and immigration as well. When I think about my mother, it's been a good life. It's been good to stay.
Yeah.
It's been really worthwhile staying. And how beautiful it is to be able to dedicate your life
Oh yeah.
to.
It's so worthwhile.
Is there anything you want to say? Or do we have it all?
No, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So I think if we're telling workers out there, focus on the intergenerational aspects, focus on the earth.
That what they're feeling is collective.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even, they're buried underneath it. Like mostly I saw my mother there and my father there. It took me a long time to find me, and me was down in the roots of the mud. But it was almost like their lives were actually directing that suicide feeling more than my own personal life, which was down there in the roots of the trees.
Yeah, you were down there.
Yeah, under there in pretty good shape with the trees.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting. And I have felt in my life I'm in pretty good shape. Because I have been in the roots of those trees. You know, I've been very, you know, I've been a privileged survivor, I would call myself.
Yeah, me too.
A privileged Indian too, right? Look at my skin is white. Don't get as much racism or as much violence as we're privileged, you know, for me, daughter of a pedophile, a privileged daughter of a pedophile.
It's such a mix, yeah.
It's so sweet, and you've been privileged too. We've been such privileged
absolutely.
Indians.
Yeah.
Well, Miigwech for now. I think we did what we could. We hope it's helpful. Bye.